This is EE370, lecture 24. Right? So we are trying to understand everything about the CMOS inverter. We have looked at most of the static or the steady state characteristics. We have studied about its voltage transfer characteristics and its midpoint voltage. We now understand how to calculate VOH, VOL, VIH, VIL, and the corresponding noise margins. In today's class, we will focus on understanding what is the static power of the CMOS inverter, few other minor static characteristics of this inverter, and then we'll finally get to calculation of the delay. Okay? So there are some very nice properties for this CMOS inverter, because of which CMOS inverter has been ruling the digital design industry for the last 4 decades. Right? One very nice feature is that the output swings of the CMOS inverter is rail to rail. For logic 0, you have the ground supply or whatever is the minimum supply, and for logic 1, you have VDD. Okay. CMOS inverter is also what we call as a ratio-less logic. What do you think this means? The term ratio-less, what does that indicate? What does it mean to you? Okay, so what this means now, I mean, you're looking at some ratio, right? What do you think? What ratio are we talking about? Could be W by L or the ratio of the bits of two devices, right? Some ratio you're dealing with. So the term ratio-less logic refers to the fact that your output steady state voltages are not a function of the device strengths of NMOS and PMOS, right? Your output logic 0 is at 0 volt according to this diagram, irrespective of the sizing of WP and WN. Similarly, your steady state logic 1 is VDD, irrespective of the ratio of the drive strength of the two devices. This is not true for certain types of inverters, right? For certain type of circuit implementations, this statement is not true. In fact, you are seeing one example in tutorial 5. I gave you a inverter where the pull-up network was a resistive load. Right? You will see that the value of VOL, the output when the input is VDD, that means where you expect logic 0 at the output, that value is now dependent on the relative values of the resistor and the current strength of the NMOS transistor. You'll see that it is not exactly equal to 0 volt. Right? So that is a ratioed logic. Whereas for a CMOS inverter, this is ratio-less because logic 0, logic 1 values at the output does not depend on the ratios of the two devices. Now, another very nice property is that the output impedance of the inverter is very low. What does this mean? At any time, your output node under steady state conditions is either connected to ground or connected to VDD through a transistor which is in linear region, right? That means in linear region, if I had to model the resistance of the transistor in linear region, can you tell me if it is going to be high or low? It's going to be very low, right? The voltage drop across it is going to be very small, and you can have large currents. You can have currents flowing through it if required, right? So the key idea why this is very beneficial is due to this fact. Let's say due to some noise in your circuit, some noise got coupled to the output, right? This will not have a long lasting effect because you have a low resistance path to either VDD or ground. So the effect of this noise here is getting suppressed by a lot, right? The attenuation is very high because you can think of this as some sort of a resistive divider or a divider like this, right? A cap R divider. So because this R is now very small, the potential drop across this is going to be small, right? That means if you had a large fluctuation around this, most of that drop will appear across this, the output voltage will not be affected. Okay? So the output impedance being very low is a very nice property for the CMOS inverter. Now, another interesting property that we did not focus on so far, what is the input steady state current for the CMOS inverter? What is this current? This is 0, right? So the CMOS inverter has a 0 input current. Why is this beneficial? Power is one part. What else? Let's say I had this inverter which was driving n inverters. Okay. Now the number of devices a particular gate is driving, you can call that as fan out. I'm calling the first inverter as the driver, and it is driving, let's say, n inverters. Let's assume that the maximum current that your inverter can provide is I0. Let's also assume that each of these inverters need to take in a current, some II, right? We'll equate II to be 0 at the end, but let's say for now, each inverter requires an input current II at steady state. Then what is the max fan out that you can have? Right? So this will be equal to I0 by II. If you connect more inverters than this number as a load, as a fan out, then your outputs are going to go wrong. Right? Because under steady state conditions, your driver inverter is not able to provide so much current. Now, because in CMOS inverters, your II is equal to 0, what is the fan out that you can have? You can have infinite fan out. Now, would this be the same if I used an inverter constructed using BJTs? No, right? There will be an upper limit on the number of inverters that it can drive. Right? And finally, let us look at the static power consumption of this inverter. So, how do I define power for this inverter now? How do I measure it? Either in simulation or in, let's say I give you breadboard and an inverter IC. How would you measure the power consumption of this inverter? So you will connect some battery or a voltage source to provide power to this inverter. Right? You simply look at what is the current that is being drawn. Right? That multiplied with VDD should give you the power consumption. Right? So we simply need to know what is the current that is being drawn by this inverter under static conditions. Right? So let us consider the two possible static conditions. One case is when Vin is equal to 0. Right? Correspondingly, what is the V0? V0 is VDD. And what is the current being taken? So what is so your Vin is now equal to 0 volt. What is the region of operation of the NMOS transistor? This is in cutoff. Your PMOS transistor is in? It is in linear region. It is the output is at VDD. So your PMOS transistor is in linear region where the VSD is equal to 0. Right? Current through the NMOS transistor is 0. Current through the PMOS transistor is also 0. Therefore, the total current being drawn from the supply is 0. Therefore, the static power under these conditions is 0 watts. Similarly, for Vin equal to VDD, my output is equal to 0 volts. What is the current? So now your input is at VDD. What is the region of operation of the PMOS transistor? This is in cutoff. Your NMOS transistor? This is in linear region. No current is flowing like this. Therefore, no current can flow through this also. Now that is possible because your NMOS transistor is in linear region with VDS equal to 0. Right? So in this condition also, you have 0 amperes being drawn from the supply. Therefore, the static power consumption is again 0 watt. Right? So, if there is no switching happening in your digital circuit, ideally it should draw 0 current. Is that clear? Ideally, your digital circuits will draw current only if some switching is happening. If everything is at steady state, where all the voltages are well defined zeros and ones, your digital circuit implemented in CMOS complementary logic should not draw any current. Now, the caveat here is we have ignored any leakages. We have assumed that when the transistor sees voltages, gate to source voltage below threshold voltage, there is no current, right? That is not always true. You can have what we call as a sub-threshold conduction, or leakages can happen. Therefore, you will have some current consumption and some static power consumption, but that value is usually very, very small compared to the dynamic power consumption. Okay, any questions on this? So now in this CMOS inverter has some very nice properties. Like I said, due to these reasons, it has been dominating the digital design industry for the last couple of decades. So now if you come up with a new type of device, right, and you are building digital circuits with it, you will have to beat the performance of CMOS inverter in all of this for that to be even a viable option for the digital design industry. Okay, so next, what should we look at? Any suggestions on what you would like to see about the CMOS inverter now that we have covered all static properties? I am sure you are all curious to see how to define a delay, right? Where is this delay coming from in a CMOS inverter? So let us look at the delay calculation. Right? So we are going to first look at the high to low propagation delay of this inverter. Let's assume that you had a rising edge like this. So this is your Vin, and let's say this is your falling edge. This is your Vout. Right? How do I measure delay? What is the definition we have used for the propagation delay? So I have given you two waveforms. Both of these are with respect to time axis. Right? What is my TPHL? High to low propagation delay. It's called as high to low because your output is going from high to low. Right? How do I define my TPHL now? From what point to what point? 50%, right? So I look at the point when your input crosses VDD by 2 to where the output is crossing VDD by 2. And the distance between them, the time interval between them, this is what I will call as my TPHL. Propagation delay of the inverter, high to low. So have you heard the term TPHL, TPLH before? If you have not heard, then TPHL is the high to low propagation delay. TPLH, so this is high to low propagation delay, and this is low to high propagation delay. The high to low simply refers to the fact that the output node is going from high to low. Similarly, the low to high propagation delay is when your V0 is going from low to high. For an inverter, the corresponding input has to go from high to low. Right? Now, if I were working with a buffer, right, the high to low propagation delay will correspond to the output going from high value to the low value. What is the input waveform corresponding to this? This is also high to low because this is a buffer, right? And then you would look at the VDD by 2 point here, the 50% point at this node, 50% point at this node, and then you will measure the time difference between them. This becomes the TP high to low for a buffer. Now, similarly, you can define high to low and low to high propagation delays for your NAND gate, NOR gate, all of the other gates. The subscripts here refer to the transition happening at the output. Okay, so is this clear? Right? Now, quickly tell me, why can't this value be 0? Right? Why can't I have the output exactly falling like this? Right? So, because now we understand that these transistors have capacitances associated with them. Right? Now, because once you have a capacitance, so I will model all capacitance associated with this node as a single capacitor to ground. Right? Now, how did I model this? We will come back to it in some time, but let's for now assume that I have taken all the relevant capacitance associated with this node as a single capacitor to ground. Now, if your V0 has to go from VDD to VDD by 2, that corresponds to this capacitor being discharged from VDD to VDD by 2. Right? And can the capacitor voltage change instantaneously? When can it change instantaneously? Let me rephrase my question. When the resistance is 0, or in other words, if you can provide impulse currents to the capacitance. Right? If you want to see what is the relationship that you know, I is equal to C dV by dt. Now, if you want to see a voltage transformation that is equal to some k times u of t, a step change, that is possible only if your current is a derivative of a step, which is an impulse current. Right? Clearly, impulse current is not possible for the given scenario. Therefore, you can expect to see some delay in which your V0 is going to change. Right? Now that we concur that delays are expected in this circuit, let's qualitatively analyze what is going to happen for this condition. Right? So when your Vin is increasing, what happens to the NMOS and PMOS transistors? Prior to this, at this point, your PMOS is completely on and your NMOS is off, and your output is at VDD. Right? Now, as your output voltage is increased, as your input voltage is increasing, the current available through this PMOS transistor is likely to decrease. Right? Because its source to gate voltage is reducing. And when it crosses the threshold voltage, your NMOS transistor turns on. And some current is then going to flow through this NMOS transistor. Is all of that current available for discharging the capacitor? No, right? Because some current is going to, your PMOS has not turned off yet. So you'll have some current flowing like this, some current which is discharging the capacitor, and this will continue till you reach VDD minus mod VTP. After that, your PMOS turns off. Now, I need not be worried about this whole length. I need to be worried till the point your output crosses VDD by 2. Is that clear? Are you able to appreciate the complexity of the calculation we are about to do? Right? We need to keep track of when each device is leaving linear region, entering saturation region, etc. Because that is going to give you the current expression. Right? And this current, we have to figure out how much of this current is coming from the capacitor, and then figure out what is the voltage profile across the capacitor. Right? Now, here is the thing. If I were to do this calculation, we can spend the rest of the course just doing this calculation, figuring out, in each class we figure out where has our NMOS reached in terms of its VDS and VGS, where has the PMOS reached in terms of VSD and VSG, and we'll continue doing this calculation till 1 week before NSEM. Then I'll give you one problem to solve, and that is what will happen for the rest of the course. Right? This is a very purely mathematical approach if I try to figure this out. And even after I do all of this, can I guarantee the accuracy of the result? Because we are using transistor models that are only first order, right? We are using a level 1 transistor model. If you want total accuracy, you have to use the 54 level transistor models, right? So the approach we are going to do, because this is not a mathematics course, is to again make, what should we do? We have to make smart, reasonable approximations, right? Because our aim is not to, do a mathematics problem for the joy of solving a mathematics problem. We are interested in designing circuits within a reasonable timeline. So we don't want to completely make this into a mathematical problem, but at the same time, we don't want to simply plug everything into a simulation and then become a spice monkey, right? We need to still get some intuitions with the calculations we are trying to do, right? With this in mind, what is the first approximation that you would recommend? What approximation can you recommend for the input waveform? Right? Instead of assuming a finite time, it makes more sense to assume that the input is a step input. So now with all of these smart approximations that we are doing now, our aim is to be able to say, okay, I have the CMOS inverter. If I increase the width of the NMOS transistor by, let's say, twice, I expect the delay to change by 2x. Right? I expect the delay to decrease by 2x. Or maybe the statement could be like, I have two CMOS inverters. I expect the second CMOS inverter to have a delay which is 50% more than the first one. You cannot make statements like the second CMOS inverter will have 1% higher delay than the first one. Right? That sort of an accuracy you will not get from the calculations you are able to do. Right? Similarly, you will not be able to say the result with an accuracy of, let's say, 1 to 2 picoseconds. I get some value here. If I do a numerical calculation and I get a delay value, all that I can say is the final value is very likely to be in the within some 50 to 60 picoseconds of this result, or some 20 to 30% of this final result. Right? We are not interested in saying the final numerical value exactly with respect to 1 picosecond or 2 picosecond error. You will make an error, but we know that we are going to make an error, and we roughly know the range of the error that is going to be made. The order of the answer is not going to change. Is that clear? So that is our motivation. So don't get disheartened when you realize that I have taken a waveform with finite rise and fall time and made it step, right? Our aim is simply to focus on the design intuitions and to make first order statements such as this circuit is going to be 2x faster than the other one. We don't focus on whether it is 1.9% faster or 1.9x faster or 2.1x faster. It's around 2x faster. That's it. Okay. Right. So now if I assume that my input is going to be a step voltage, then for t equal to 0 minus, right, the conditions are going to be your VC voltage, which is same as the output voltage, is equal to VDD, and the input voltage is equal to 0 volt. For t equal to 0 plus, your VC is still at VDD and your input voltage is going to be VDD. From t equal to 0 plus onwards, how does our circuit look like? What comment can you make about the PMOS transistor? Vin is VDD, so the PMOS transistor is in cutoff region, right? So basically my circuit now simplifies to an NMOS transistor whose gate to source voltage is always at VDD, connected to a capacitor where the capacitor had an initial voltage equal to VDD. I am interested till the time point when the final voltage becomes VDD by 2 and the PMOS transistor is off, right? At best it is offering some capacitance which we have already included in the CL. Right? So this is what my circuit reduces down to. This is a much more easier problem for us to solve. Right? Now there are two ways to go about solving this. In one method, we will reduce the circuit down to a resistor which is discharging a capacitor. In another method, we will reduce it down to a current source which is discharging a capacitor. Right? Now, if it's a current source, this current is same as the IDS of the NMOS transistor, where this IDS value is a function of V0. Is that clear? Now, can you comment on what value of resistance I should choose here? Or does this even make sense to replace a transistor with a resistor? Huh. Why?
It's linear no? With respect to VDS, and VDS is constant. So current is has a linear dependence on the voltage
Overall current has a linear dependence on the voltage
across VDS.
across the VDS. Okay. The statement is assuming that you remain in the same region throughout the discharging path, right? Okay. So let me just say this for now, right? There is some current IDS flowing through this, right? And there is some voltage V0 at that point. If I do V0 by IDS, I will have a quantity which has the dimensions of a resistor, right? So for a given value of V0 and IDS, I do V0 by IDS and I put a resistor here, right? And then I can replace this. Now, if the value of V0 changes, the value of IDS will also change, right? And then I can have a new value of the resistance here, right? Now, for the statement you made, so this is V0 by IDS, you have assumed it to be in some sort of saturation region. So this becomes V0 by IDS is some I0 into 1 plus lambda V0. Is that linear? Right? So the resistance is a nonlinear resistance. Right? The value of the R has to be different for each value of V0. Is that clear? Now, if the value of the R is different for each value of V0, right, then again, this becomes a complicated problem. But our interest is to immediately get design intuitions. So what is a reasonable smart approximation that you will do? Lambda goes to 0, then the problem is simplified a lot, right? You lose out the design intuition also, right? Can we still keep lambda to be a small but non-zero value and make some other approximation here to still calculate delay with some reasonable accuracy? So you have some parameter, right, that is changing. Let's say you have some function f of x. This has some value as you go from x1 to x2. This is not a constant. If I had to use a single value for f of x, what value would you use? You'll take the average, right? Now, depending on the situation you're working with, maybe there is a reason to use the maximum value if you're interested in worst case, or maybe there is a reason to use the minimum value. But in general, we tend to use the average value, right? So I could model this whole circuit by taking the average of the resistance and I put that equivalent value of resistance here. Then your circuit boils down to an RC network. And an RC network is something that we have studied a lot. If this is an RC network and your output needs to go from its initial value to half of the initial value, what is the delay? This will be equal to 0.69 into time constant. So R equivalent into CL. You have to go from VDD to VDD by 2. Is this result new to you? So if you have an RC network, how does the output waveform look like? You have an RC network, the capacitor is charged to some value and it is discharging through a resistor, right? So this will be some initial value into e power minus t by tau, right? And you're interested in the final value becoming whatever was the initial value by 2. And you want to know what is the time taken for this to happen. So you can rearrange this and write an expression for t equal to, and that will turn out to be 0.69 into tau. So in our case, the time constant is R equivalent into CL. So the delay becomes 0.69 into R equivalent into CL. Okay. So I have shown you two methods here. One is to model your transistor as an equivalent resistance, and once you have that, your circuit boils down to an RC network. The other one is to model your transistor as a current source, where the current source is a function of V0, and then you have a capacitor being discharged by a current source. Which of these methods will you use to calculate the delay? Current source. Why? Calculation seems simple. Everybody agrees? Okay, so now let me show you what are the calculations you're going to do in future, right, in this course. Right now, the circuit involves a very simple single inverter, which at the max is going to drive another inverter that we said is going to offer a capacitive load, right? So you have a capacitive load like this. But this net that I have now drawn like a very nice straight line eventually is going to be implemented using metal lines, right? And anytime you implement something using a metal line, it will have associated resistance and capacitance. And this is likely to be of distributed nature like this, right? Similarly, right now your pull down network is a single transistor. In future, your pull down network might start looking like this, right? Or it might start looking like this. So these are going to get much more complex depending on the logic function that you're trying to implement, right? So now you want to calculate delay for all of these cases in future, right? Now, do you want to revise your answer? So if you use a current source in this format where the value of the current source is a function of the voltage seen across these two terminals, then you will be having multiple current sources like this, and then you will be trying to figure out how the capacitances are going to discharge. Oh, just to tell you something more interesting, you will also see that there are capacitance in the in-between nodes, right? But if you model this circuit as an R equivalent times CL, then irrespective of the number of capacitance or the transistors that you keep adding, it will still become an RC network. Is that clear? So again, we tend to do things that we, even if we see something that we don't know and yet seeing it for the first time, we tend to connect it to things that we know, right? And we know RC networks. So in digital circuits, we typically model your circuit as an R equivalent and a C, and any number of transistors you add, any number of long interconnects you add, you can simplify all of them into an R and a C, right? So eventually you'll end up with a big RC circuit. It is still an RC circuit even though it is big, and we are now experts in calculating the time constants of RC circuit, calculating the delay, etc. So because of these reasons, we tend to prefer this method, right? Any questions on this? Okay, so then let us see how we can calculate this R equivalent. So we said that this R equivalent is going to be average of V0 by whatever is the current flowing through that transistor, and we take the average when the V0 is going from VDD to VDD by 2. Now, can you tell me the expression for IDS? For that, we need to know the region of operation of this transistor. What is the VGS of this transistor? VGS is VDD, and that remains as a constant VDD throughout, right? Then this will have some VDSAT, and the VDS is going to change from some large value to a small value, right? The VDS is going to start from VDD and we are interested in till it reaches VDD by 2, right? So in effect, I am looking at the IDS versus VDS curve, and I am interested in the region in the currents from VDD to all the way to VDD by 2. Okay? And you are likely to have your VD sat 10. So I'm assuming that this is a short channel transistor. You're likely to have your VD sat 10 smaller than VDD by 2. Right? That means your transistor is going to be in velocity saturation. Can you tell me the expression for the current? Mu n COX W by L VD sat n into VGS minus VTN. So in our case, that is VDD minus VTN minus VD sat n by 2 into 1 plus lambda V naught. Right? So I'm going to represent this as some I naught into 1 plus lambda V naught, because V naught doesn't appear in the rest of the expression. So now I can write my R as a function of V naught to be equal to V naught by I naught into 1 plus lambda V naught. Then can you tell me the expression for R equivalent? How do I take the average? So if I had a function f of x and it was changing in some fashion between x1 to x2, how do I take the average of f of x? How do I take the average? Integrate and divide by x2 minus x1. Right? Now based on that, can you tell me the expression for R equivalent? So I need to integrate from some initial value to final value, V naught by I naught into 1 plus lambda V naught, and then I divide this by V final minus V initial. Right? So this is the calculation that I want you to do right now, and so you have this expression 1 by 1 plus lambda V naught here. Right? I don't want to keep lambda equal to 0, but if lambda is very small, how can I rewrite this? This becomes 1 minus lambda V naught. Okay. Now with this information, can you quickly calculate the R equivalent and tell me the answer? Please do the calculation. Right. So when you get an answer like this, what is the first step you do? Do a derivation, get an answer. First step, some sort of sanity check, right? What is the easiest sanity check that you can always do? Check the dimensions. So on the LHS, you have something with the dimension of a resistor. So you're looking for something of the format V by I. The first term has VDD by I naught, you are fine. For the second term, you have lambda VDD square by I naught. What is the dimension of lambda? 1 by V, right? So you altogether, you still have a V by I form. So your dimension check is correct, right? Now another check that you can do is to take your lambda equal to 0. When lambda is equal to 0, that simplifies to the current being pulled out of this being a constant, right? So you have a constant I naught getting pulled out of this capacitor, in which case, how would you solve this? If this was the figure given to you, how would you solve this? So you have some capacitor CL, right? It needs to go from, the charge on it needs to go from VDD to VDD by 2. That means the delta V the capacitor needs to see is VDD by 2, right? And you know that delta Q will be equal to C into delta V, where the delta Q can be written as current being drawn into a time duration for which it is being drawn, right? So if your delta V is corresponding to capacitor discharging from VDD to VDD by 2, what is delta T? Yes, it is the delay that you are interested in. That will be your TPHL. Right? So what is the expression for TPHL? It's 1 by 2 C VDD by I naught. Right? And how do I check if the result match? In this expression of R equivalent, if I put lambda equal to 0, what do I get? This is equal to 3 by 4 VDD by I naught. Does the result match? It's a trick question. Am I comparing the right parameters? The C is same, right? You are taking the same CM, right? I need to compare TPHL when calculated with this R equivalent, right? That TPHL is going to be equal to 0.69 into R equivalent into CL, where my R equivalent is now 3 by 4 VDD by I naught into CL. So quickly calculate this value and tell me what you get. Okay, this is roughly 0.5 into VDD by I naught into CL. Now you can compare these two results. Do they match? So you have more confidence in the derivation that you have just done. Right? But this is also a nice way to compare the two methods that we discussed earlier. We said that we could be looking at some R equivalent into CL, R equivalent discharging a capacitor through it, or we could be looking at a capacitor where it is being discharged through some current source where the value of the current is a function of the V naught. Right? I have quickly compared both these methods under the conditions of lambda equal to 0, and we see that both results match. And this is what we expect to see also, right? Irrespective of whether you model it as using method 1 or using method 2, we expect to see similar results at the end. Then we are choosing between the two methods for our convenience, right? And let's also quickly take a look at how the waveforms are going to look like. So I'm going to sketch V naught. Initially, it starts from VDD. If I model this as a resistor and a capacitor, how does the discharging waveform look like? It is a first order exponential curve like this in the form of e power minus t by tau. If I model it as a current being discharged, current being used to discharge the capacitor, then the waveform is going to look like this. So clearly the time domain waveforms with these two models are going to be different. But we are not interested in the time domain waveforms in these calculations. We are simply interested in the delay. And you see that provided you calculate your R equivalent correctly, both of them can give you the correct delay when you go from VDD till VDD by 2. This is clear? In using these models, we are not interested in the waveforms at any other point other than the value from V naught equal to VDD to V naught equal to VDD by 2. For that calculation, it doesn't make a difference whether you use method 1 or method 2, both of them will yield the same result. Any questions here? Why would it give a straight line? Short channel transistor with lambda equal to 0. Why would it? So the current is, so your resistor, no, I didn't follow. Repeat the question once more.
So we are taking short channel transistor assumption.
Correct.
That will mean that we are doing nearly constant current.
That doesn't mean that we are drawing nearly constant current, right? If you are not ignoring the channel length modulation, the current value is going to change. The current value is not constant, it has a variation. If you make lambda equal to 0, then the current is constant. So for a quick comparison, I have assumed lambda equal to 0 and then have done the comparison of both the methods. Right? You can do this calculation, so you can derive the result here, assuming lambda to be some finite value. You can derive it, and you'll see that that also matches. So you'll compare it to the R equivalent derived with lambda being a finite positive value, and you can compare both and see that that will also match. Once more. Lambda is equal to 0 for both the cases. This is just to show you that both methods yield the same final result. Right? I use lambda equal to 0 just to make the calculations easier. But you can go back and derive this method, the delay in this method, by assuming a finite lambda. And you'll see that that also matches. Okay? Now, I have one request to you guys. When you come tomorrow, when you come for the next class, please think of how to model the capacitance. Right? I have right now assumed a nice capacitor connected between this output node to the ground as CL. But imagine that you are driving another inverter. Look at all the capacitances associated with the transistors you have learned so far, and see if you are able to figure out what should be the value of CL in terms of all the drain to bulk, source to bulk, gate to channel capacitance of these 4 transistors.